If there's anything we like in the retro gaming space, it's new games being released for old consoles decades after they've been discontinued. Here's a great example. 30 years after the Game Boy was released, along comes a 30th anniversary tribute game that also happens to be a bullet hell shmup. And for anyone with an emulator or an EverDrive, it's totally free. In this episode of Bullet Heaven, we're taking a look at Dangan GB for the original Game Boy. Dangan GB is a vertical bullet hell boss rush developed in 2019 by Snorpung for the original Game Boy. Produced with original hardware in mind, it was published on itch.io as a downloadable ROM on March 27, 2019. As far as Game Boy shmups go, this freebie is as accessible as it gets, with compatibility in system-accurate PC emulators and Game Boy flashcards. It also has some impressive features given its platform. Let's take a closer look. Dangan GB's premise is pretty simple. Players are tasked with defeating 6 bosses, known as dreadnoughts, in sequential order using just a basic shot and armed with a handful of bombs. Players fire their blaster with the A button and deploy screen-waving bombers with B, as is expected. The player's life and bomb stock are found in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen with their score and timer in the bottom left. Each dreadnought has a number of phases and engages the player with dense bullet salvos and other unique attacks hinted at in the current stage name. Most of these enemy barrages are static patterns that allow the player to weave around the screen in an effort to strike the dreadnought's core, a central spot on each that serves as their only weak spot. If a hit is scored, the dreadnought will flash, otherwise the bullet will strike with no damage inflicted. Players have a very small hitbox. In fact, it's literally a single pixel hitbox. Only bullets that hit the ship's canopy on its dark pixel will result in a death. However, some dreadnoughts have sneaky attacks paired with their flood of bullets, making for a very challenging time. Especially since there is only one basic shot, no power-ups, and no bomber pickups, later stages can be particularly challenging if the first few can't be managed flawlessly without the aid of a bomb. With this in mind, there are a couple of conventions that are bucked in Dangan GB. Firstly, dying will not replenish the player's bomber stock, meaning what they start with is all they'll have throughout the game. Second, clearing a dreadnought phase will not clear its bullets from the screen. However, there is often a sizable gap between attacks when one phase ends and another begins. Dangan GB also features a number of options that can change how the game is played. 3 difficulties and variable ship speed can be accessed in the options menu. The difficulty isn't tied to the player's opposition though, rather, only the number of starting lives and bombers is different between them. Easy starts the player with 6 lives and 6 bombs, normal with 3 and 3, and hard with 3 lives but no bombs. While Dangan GB can definitely be a hard game, it's also fair and, by extension, not entirely unapproachable for new shmup players. If anything, it can serve as a great starting point to get used to bullet hell patterns on a very basic level. This is reinforced by Dangan GB's sharp, responsive control, fast, smooth frame rate, and flickerless visuals. Quite the impressive feat on the humble Game Boy. But is it any fun? Oh, absolutely. Dangan GB is already a game I pick up and play frequently. It's a perfect game to have on the go for a quick session, especially given my newfound interest in restoring and upgrading old Game Boys. That it runs as well as it does, in ways that rival the efforts of many classic Game Boy developers, it's pretty amazing too. It may be a little on the short side given that it is just a boss rush, but it's still no less fun for it. There's even a decent little scoring system under the hood as well. A few factors contribute to the player's score in Dangan GB. First and foremost, landing a hit on the dreadnought's core will award the player points which are adjusted by proximity. The closer the player is to the dreadnought, the more each hit will be worth. Obviously, hits to any other part of the enemy will not be counted towards the player's score. The rest of the player's score will occur at stage end with a number of bonuses awarded for player performance. Shots fired versus shots landed on the core are tallied as a percentile and multiplied by 100. So if a player gets a 50% hit miss, they'll get a 5,000 point bonus. The player will also receive a time bonus. The timer's end value is also multiplied by 100, so 72 seconds left on the clock will translate to 7,200 points. Taking out a dreadnought as quickly as possible is emphasized in this respect. Finally, if a player makes it through without dying, they'll receive a 10,000 point no-death bonus. With all of these scores taken into consideration, players can receive extends before the next stage starts for every 50,000 points achieved, but only at stage end. Thankfully, if the player misses an extend on one stage but makes up the points for 2 extends in the next, they'll both be awarded at the end of the following stage. The only drawback to the whole package is the lack of a tracked high score or local leaderboard. Even if it was only a single score that was maintained until power off, it could have gone a long way. A fast snapshot of the game over screen with a camera or video capture may be the only way to chronicle the player's best exploits. Granted, it'd be much easier on a PC emulator, of course, given the screen capture key. That's a nice advantage. Dangan GB has a pretty great sense of style, something that's always challenging on a system that displays only in 4 shades of green. The original Game Boy only has a more or less square aspect ratio with a resolution of 160 by 144 pixels. The point is, it's a little restrictive. That's not a problem though, as Dangan GB features relatively large, highly visible bullets and fairly detailed enemy design. Attacking each dreadnought's core is easy enough to accomplish thanks to their large size and easy to follow structure. And it's also worth mentioning, Tally the Technician is adorable. We'd say the only thing that keeps the visuals in Dangan GB from being the best they can be is the limitations on an original Game Boy screen. Its refresh rate is just a bit too sluggish to keep up with the action, especially with a dark background. The player's shots in particular are very hard to see. Thankfully, IPS screen mods exist. Links below, just saying. And Super Game Boys, like the Super Game Boy 2 I'm using here, not to mention the Game Boy Color's reflective TFT display, also exist to alleviate any classic Game Boy screen woes one might have, as far as OG hardware is concerned anyway. So the visuals are pretty good and they run buttery smooth. What better to go with them but an awesome 8-bit techno soundtrack by Nordlof that absolutely slaps. I'd buy this on a CD. But it doesn't exist on CD. The cartridge will just have to do. Otherwise, Dangan GB's sound effects are as serviceable as you'd expect from a game such as this. Nothing especially noteworthy, yet solid. The music is really the main draw from an audio standpoint. A slick main menu with fluid movement allows players to tweak their gameplay settings and even allows access to a BGM and SFX sound test right out of the gate for players to indulge in the dulcet tones of a grey brick from 1989. Made with 2019 sensibilities. Aw yeah. So how does Dangan GB stack up? Let's take a look. For a classic Game Boy game, Dangan GB features stunningly accurate, sharp, responsive control regardless of the platform it's being played on. Yes, even the original Game Boy. This is ostensibly a boss rush, so the length of the game is going to be inherently short, and its lack of any kind of leaderboard or high score display might hurt any kind of competitive score chasing. Getting good enough for a hard 1cc might extend Dangan GB's playtime though. Speaking of which, even on easy, Dangan GB will give players a run for every bit of their $0 of money, especially starting on stage 3, naturally. Working towards a hard 1cc is very possible though, especially for Denmaku veterans. Dangan GB's visuals are solid and look pretty great on our IPS Game Boy Advance SP and Super Game Boy 2, but while it is still playable, it doesn't fare especially well on a classic Game Boy screen. The audio in Dangan GB is just amazing though, featuring solid sound effects and a bumpin' soundtrack. Seriously, I'd honestly buy a CD soundtrack of this. A new classic Game Boy game in 2019 is pretty ingenious. A new Game Boy game that runs silky smooth with no sprite or bullet flicker? Even better. However, Dangan GB is still just a boss rush with minimal gameplay features, even if it is as fun to play as it is. Free is the best price, so by default Dangan GB has excellent value. The $25 cartridge is of a decent value as well, if that route is of particular interest. Dangan GB is one of those games that would have fit right in back when these games were still being made, and I'm super glad that it can be experienced by anybody with its unbeatable price point. It captures the kind of magic that classic Game Boy games had back when I got my first unit in 1990. Don't sleep on this one, just get it. Dangan GB comes highly recommended. You can snag a ROM of Dangan GB for free on itch.io. For those of you out there with original hardware, no EverDrive, and about $25 in dispensable cash, you can also get an officially produced physical cartridge from Catskill Electronics. Links for each below. More of this, please. I've always believed that the original Game Boy had all of the magic ingredients for the best handheld experience. Minimalist visuals, pick up and play games, great battery life. Yeah, even after all this time, I still love the Game Boy, and I don't think that'll ever change. So what's your favorite handheld console? Let us know in the comments below. Until next time, we'll see you all in the next episode.